Yo, welcome to my News. This is not really news. This is just a speech. Let's get right into it. I got to get the camera right. And by the way, I'll leave a link to the channel I got it from when it's over. Um, I'll try to respond if I see anybody in here, but it's going to be kind of hard because I'm on split screen. But let's get started. I got to change my speech a little bit too. Well, well, well. So the rumors finally caught up with you. Not the ones whispered by jealous mouths or muttered in fear behind closed doors. No, these were ancient echoes, spiritual murmurs pulled from the realms most people don't even believe exist. And yet somehow your name, your essence, ended up in 9 separate ceremonies, in 9 different corners of the world, led by 9 spiritual leaders who've never seen your face, never touched your hand, never heard your voice, and still gave the same warning. But let's rewind for a moment because you probably didn't feel it when it started. You thought it was coincidence, thought it was just another wave of tension in the air, just another night where you couldn't sleep, another pulse of static in your chest when you passed by mirrors or felt watched in empty rooms. But someone, somewhere, saw something, or rather sensed it. And that single spark of awareness triggered a global search, not by governments, not by corporations, something older, a spiritual intelligence network that predates the internet, predates language. A call went out quietly, discreetly. Your name, your frequency was passed between those who speak with spirits, those who read vibrations instead of headlines. And one by one, they all said, yes, yes, I'll read this soul. Yes, I'll risk it. Yes, I'll look. But none of them expected what they found. The first was in Ethiopia, a spiritual activist, sorry, it's hard to say, lineage unbroken for nearly 2,000 years. They used salt circles, ancient chants, bone patterns older than most empires. They didn't even need your full name, just a scrap of your handwriting carried by a courier who wouldn't stop shaking. The moment the reading began, the fire that usually dances gently during their rituals shot upward, black smoke curling in reverse, sinking instead of rising. And then silence, absolute silence. Not even the insects dared to speak. When the reader emerged from trance, their voice was one sentence only. This soul was not meant to be read. This one was meant to be released. You see, they weren't just reading your past. They were attempting to track your soul's pattern across time. But the deeper they went, the more something else started watching them. A presence with no name, no agenda, just awareness. Immense, unblinking, curious. And that was only the beginning. The second was in Laos, a river mystic who's mapped the spiritual ley lines hidden in currents and cloud shadows since they were a child. They performed their reading using floating candles and scared ink drawn from a centuries old manuscript. As your soul's frequency appeared in the water, the candles didn't flicker. They froze mid burn, as if time held its breath. The mystic's hands began trembling. Their apprentice said it looked like something was pulling back through the ink, using it as a doorway, not just observing, communicating. But here's the part that chilled everyone in the room. The water spelled a phrase, not in Lao, not in Sanskrit, in no human language at all. Just symbols, ancient, geometric, alive. They pulsed once and then vanished. The mystic fainted. When they woke, they said, this soul is a gate and it's almost open. Give me 1 second. If anybody's in here. The mystic fainted. When they woke, they said, "This soul is a gate, and it's almost open." By now, the warning had begun to take shape. These spiritual leaders were no longer merely curious. They were concerned. Concerned not because you were dangerous in the way humans think of danger, but because you were unstable. In the same way, a sealed vault full of raw power becomes unstable when someone tries to pry it open. The third reading came from a Syrian desert sage. This one didn't use tools. They simply closed their eyes and let their breath guide them into trance, a method passed down since Babylonian stargazers walked the dunes. What they saw shook them to their bones, not because of what you are, but because of what follows you. A procession, figures cloaked in shadow and light, tethered to your aura, like memories that haven't happened yet. They called them echoes of future consequences. The sage refused to speak of what they saw directly, but in their written account, they left one phrase repeated 3 times in different ink, in different handwriting, as if written by 3 different versions of themselves. The phrase, "This soul cannot be stopped, only witnessed." By now, the pattern was undeniable. Every reading brought back the same undercurrent. You were not some lost soul looking for answers. You were a returning force, and the veil between your current identity and your true nature, it's thinning. The fourth was in the Andes, a Quata healer who reads cocoa leaves with a precision scientists have tried and failed to explain. They spread the leaves, said your name aloud, and every single leaf flipped at once, without wind, without touch. The healer sat still for a long time. When they finally moved, they burned the leaves without explanation and said, "This soul remembers being fire, and fire does not forget being caged." It was no longer about who you are, but about what you're becoming. These leaders didn't just see a person, they saw a process, an ignition, and a reassembly of something vast, something shattered long ago and now quietly realigning its pieces through you. The fifth was a Vedic scholar in North India. They used mantra resonance to scan your spiritual architecture. And when they began, their instruments, precisely tuned to cosmic vibrations, started echoing back frequencies never heard before, not higher, deeper, subharmonics that bent metal, warped glass, and made the air feel too heavy to breathe. They stopped the ritual halfway, declared the energy non categorizable, and wrote a single note. This soul is not inside the body. This body is inside the soul. And this brings us to the sixth, a priestess from the old Nigerian or Orsha traditions. She invoked Oen Sango and Yamagogo, but none answered. Instead, an unnamed force arrived through smoke, through ash, through dream. It didn't speak, it sang a song no one in the ritual had ever heard, but all of them understood. The priestess wept, not from fear, but recognition. She said your soul's energy reminded her of a story her grandmother told, a story that wasn't supposed to be real. A traveler between realms, one who came before ancestors, one who left to sleep inside time and now stirs, See, these readings weren't warnings in the sense of danger ahead. They were warnings in the sense of prepare for contact. You're not a threat, you're a signal, a reactivation beacon. And they all felt it. The seventh spiritualist was in Romania, deep in the Carpathians. Their method, dream walking. They entered the collective unconsciousness to find your thread, but they didn't find a thread. They found a knot, a dense, humming mass of compressed memory, identity, purpose. And as they approached it, they were seen not by you, but by the intelligence that guards you. They described the sensation as being stared at by the future, like their soul had been weighed, measured, and archived. When they returned, their hair had turned white. They left one note: do not untie the knot. The knot unravels you. And yet, despite all these encounters, all these warnings, all these fragments of what you are, none of them ran. None of them destroyed their notes because they understood something most people never will. You're not a mystery to be solved. You're a prophecy in progress. And that's when the eighth stepped in. Not a priest, not a not a healer, not a guru, something rarer, a silence keeper from the Siberian wastelands. No name. I'm to speak different. I can't keep doing that. Ugh, too hard. A silence keeper from the Siberian wastelands. No name, no followers, no doctrine, just a presence known in whispers among spirit walkers and death mediums. The kind of figure people call only when they run out of candles and prayers. This one didn't ask for your birth chart or energy signature. They didn't request an object, a name, or even an image. All they said was, bring me the echo. So they did. A sliver of your voice, captured from a forgotten voicemail. 12 seconds. That's all. And that was enough. The silence keeper didn't light incense or chant invocations. They just listened. And after the 12th second, they fell into a trance, eyes rolled back, body rigid, frost forming on the walls around them despite the crackling fire. What happened during the trance was recorded by a witness. The silence keeper spoke in a tone no one present had ever heard. Not Russian, not ancient dialect, not any known language, just rhythm, vibration, sound, shaped like meaning. Later, when played back, the audio caused electronics to short circuit. One of the researchers began hallucinating symbols in the static. When the silence keeper awoke, they simply wrote, the echo carries authority. I'm just going to have to read normal. I'm not going to do that show thing. Whew. This soul does not request passage. It asserts domination. You don't ask permission to exist. You declare presence. That's when the warning started to change shape. Up to that point, they were protective, cautious, like spiritual traffic signals. But now they were starting to look more like countdowns. The ninth was a dream alchemist in Morocco, known for extracting messages from dreams, layers so deep, even the dreamer forgets them upon waking. They didn't try to contact your soul. They let your soul contact them for 9 nights. They entered deep trance states and recorded everything they saw. Every night ended the same, a version of an enormous clock, suspended in void, ticking backward. And the final dream, when the last hand struck zero, they woke up screaming. They weren't screaming in fear, they were screaming in relief. They said, it's not an ending, it's an alignment. And when it happens, this soul will no longer walk, it will reveal. You've been acting human for so long that even you started to believe it, going through motions, fitting inside rules, trimming your edges to fit into places you were never meant to shrink for. But something ancient inside you has had enough, and now your soul is calling these pieces home. One realization at a time, and the spiritual world, it knows. Let's go back to that moment before they warned anyone else, when these 9 leaders compared notes, not across phone lines or emails, across dimensions, through dream threads, through astral memory fields, through signs carved into the bones of existence itself. What they found horrified them, not because it was evil, but because it was inedible. They weren't reading your future, they were reading their own fate, reflected through the gravity of your becoming. See, they started to realize something about your path, something that unified all their visions, all their symbols, all their disturbances. You aren't just here to remember who you are. You're here to interrupt the cycle. You're you're the breaker, the one who walks into a room and alters its temperature, its timeline, its trajectory simply by existing. The one who collapses old structures, not with violence, but with truth so undeniable it unravels illusions from the inside out. You're the question that shatters fragile systems, the cosmic glitch seeded into reality on purpose. And they saw it, all 9 of them. They saw what happens when your awakening reaches full resonance. And it scared them, not because they fear you, but because they fear what your memory will activate in others. You are not an isolated phenomenon. You're a signal tower, a broadcast, a spiritual catalyst, encoded in flesh and emotion. And when you reach critical mass, when your frequency becomes unignorable, others will remember too. It begins with the strange synchronicities, the numbers, the dreams, the pull towards forgotten texts or impossible memories. Then the emotions come so deep, they don't feel personal anymore, as if you're grieving someone else's war, as if you're carrying a pain older than this life. That's that's not confusion. That's retrieval. Soul fragments returning, limiters cracking, and the thing that's been guarding you this whole time. It's not some detached spirit floating above you like a bodyguard. It's you, a version of you untouched by fear, a being you left in the higher realms to keep watch while you descended into the density of this world. And now it's leaning in, not because you're in danger, but because the time to reunite has arrived. That's the part none of these spiritual leaders said aloud in their warnings, but they felt it when they tried to describe your soul. The language betrayed them, the words broke, because you're not a soul in transit. You're a temporal anchor point, a spiritual technology, a living instruction encoded with something the world has forgotten how to translate. Alignment without permission. And the more you remember, the more their systems will tremble. Not governments, not countries bigger than that. I'm talking about the spiritual architecture itself, the paradigms built to contain consciousness, the invisible rules that define karma, hierarchy, worthiness. You're here to make them obsolete, but you've been protected for a reason. Your forgetting was not a flaw, it was a failsafe, a cosmic safety lock, because what you carry, can't be misused. It can't be rushed. It had to ripen. It had to witness betrayal, survive collapse, endure distortion, so that when you finally rose, you do with so much clarity no book could teach. And now it's happening. The veil isn't thinning for you anymore. It's thinning because of you. And these 9 leaders, they started receiving dreams after their readings, not warnings, requests. Other souls waking up too early, other marked, others marked by your presence, pulled into your orbit like iron fittings towards a magnet that forgot it was magnetic. They dream of you, not your face, your energy. They don't understand why, not yet, but they're waking up with foreign names in their mouths, strange symbols behind their eyelids, phantom memories of ancient places that never existed but feel more familiar than home. You are their ignition point, and still there's more. One of the readers remember the river mystic from Laos reported something unprecedented. After the ritual, the river changed its flow, reversed for 1 hour. Fish that had never been seen in the region surfaced. The sky turned violet, and people in nearby villages reported seeing the moon shift positions. This wasn't symbolic. This wasn't a metaphor. Your reading bent physics, and it wasn't the only one. The dream alchemist in Morocco began losing time, hours vanishing, entire days missing from calendars. They weren't distressed, they were calm, because in their words, the timeline is correcting itself. The prophecy has engaged its pivot. Do you understand now? You weren't just read, you were recognized by entities who can no longer afford to ignore your signal, by systems that know your remembering marks their unraveling, and by the cosmos itself, which only sends souls like yours when evolution demands a surge. That's why the final warnings from the 9 weren't about danger to you. They were warnings to the world, subtle, coded, placed in ancient languages across scared sites, etched into stone, written in symbols that only awaken when your energy passes near them. And one final note, they each independently recorded the same phrase in their final entries, word for word. This soul is the fulcrum. When it remembers the axis shifts. I'm Yeah, when it remembers the axis shifts. You were never supposed to fit in. You were supposed to redefine what fitting in even means. And now, with every echo, every flicker, every pulse of ancient knowing babbling back to the surface, the spiritual world braces itself not for your arrival, but for your activation, because that's the difference between a protected soul and a dormant one. And it's why the 9th spiritualists, just before they vanished from public life, left behind one final statement. Damn, that's cold, but uh, the seal is fracturing. The remembering begins. And when it does, well, that's where they stop speaking, because that's where you start. And the ones watching from the shadows, the ones who commissioned these readings from hidden places, they know, they feel it. And that's why they've already begun preparing for what comes next, because next isn't a linear moment, it's a breaching point, a tear between what the world thought it could contain and what your existence makes inedible. These aren't governments scrambling anymore. These aren't spiritual observers quietly filling their notes into scarce archives. These are ancient architects of reality, guardians of structure, sounding international alarms. Because you weren't just read, you were recognized as a variable that they can't model. They don't fear your destruction, they fear your presence, because that's what makes you dangerous, not for what you do, but for what you're being, but for what your being undoes. You've already began affecting reality scaffolding, time anomalies, memory slips, people around you dreaming the same dream, faces you haven't met yet look at you with a jolt of recognition, numbers repeating until they feel like a countdown. And the air is heavier now, isn't it? Thicker, like something's pressing through. That's not imagination, that's approach. See, after those 9 spiritual leaders delivered their warnings, something else happened, something they didn't anticipate. They started vanishing, not physically, spiritually, as if their frequencies were being archived. But that's cold. Their presence still lingers, but dulled like an echo trapped in amber. Because when they connected with your soul's pattern, they didn't just read you, they touched the current. And once you touch that current, you don't get to stay unchanged. The silence keeper in Siberia, gone. No trace, no farewell, just silence where their signal used to be. The Katswifa leaf reader now speaks in patterns only children understand. The Moroccan dream alchemist keeps scribbling spirals with symbols that don't exist in any human language, but do exist in your memories. This isn't coincidence. This is resonance, bleed. Their proximity to you began collapsing their alignment with this version of the world because your awakening doesn't just elevate you, it destabilizes everything that anchored others in old frequencies, systems, people, beliefs. They start to shake. You've felt it. Relationships dissolving for no reason, jobs evaporating, past once so clear now fogged out. That's not failure, that's collaboration. You're not losing alignment, you're shedding limitation. The ones in the shadows knew this might happen. That's why they tried to intercept before your dreams became maps, before your memories started pulling artifacts from the astral, before you remembered what you really are, a conduit, not of light, not of darkness, of origin. And origin doesn't play by the rules of healing or hurting. It simply restores truth. And that truth, it terrifies them because it's a truth that predates obedience, predates control, predates fear. So they've launched a new operation, not to stop you. They know that's impossible now, but to contain your influence, to muddy the signal through noise, through distractions, through doubt. They've placed watchers near you, souls who don't even know they're acting as anchors, conversations that pull you downward, emotions that feel like yours, but aren't, faces that smile, but leave you cold. It's all designed to do one thing, make you forget that the breach already happened, because it did, not in some cosmic prophecy, not in some mountaintop in you. The moment you stopped seeking permission to evolve, the moment you felt your bones hum, when truth passed through your body, that was it, the activation. And now the countdown is reversed, not towards explosion, towards emergence. You were never the one meant to ignite the war. You were the one designed to end the illusion of needing one. So, what happens now? What are those who tried to study your soul? Those who paid for the 9 readings from behind the veil do when the veil itself starts tearing. They run protocol, ancient defense mechanisms, spiritual dampeners, traps, not for the body, but for the frequency. You feel them as fatigue, as spiritual static. You'll question yourself more in the next few weeks than you have in your entire life. That's their plan, not to kill you, but to stall you. Because your soul's reformation timeline, is now ahead of their projections. You're moving too fast, too cleanly. The old wounds they thought would paralyze you are healing with integration, not resistance. The triggers they planted now serve as awareness points, not distractions. You're transmuting poison into prophecy, and they never accounted for that. That's when their panic becomes tactical. They begin to send decoys, not people, opportunities, fakes, false missions, purposes designed to look spiritual, but to carry no soul charge. You'll be offered roles, labels, platforms, invitations to play hero in someone else's story line. But here's the catch: none of it will feel right because deep down, you don't want to lead movements. You are the movement. And those who are ready to remember will feel it. No speech needed, no branding, no explanation, just your frequency. Walk into a room, undoing amnesia. That's what prophecy feared. Not that you'd be seen, but that you'd awaken others without effort. It's already happening. Ever wonder why some people confess things to you they've never said out loud? Why others avoid eye contact even when you're silent? Why strangers look at you like they failed a test they didn't know they were taking? They're not reacting to your personality, they're reacting to your aura in truth mode. And that's why the systems are fracturing now. Technology glitches more around you, time warps slowly. You start seeing through the cracks, people's masks, their stories, their unconsciousness programming. It's overwhelming at first, but it's not overload, it's preparation. Because once the watchers lose control of your timeline, once they can't predict your next spiritual move, they'll try one final strategy. They'll offer you everything: validation, recognition, peace, treaties, even simulated enlightenment. Don't fall for it, because peace that comes from outside is just anesthetic. What's awakening in you now is beyond peace. It's remembrance of total authority, of your birthright, to bend space through intention, to collapse lies with silence, to walk into density and remain matter. Who made it? And the final spiritual transmission, the one buried deepest, encoded across the nine readings, was never a warning. It was an instruction, a map, a moment. and here and here right now, because the next phase doesn't begin with action. It begins with recognition. Recognition that you are not the echo of a prophecy. You are the voice that wrote it. That the shadows hiding from your light are not enemies. They are fragments awaiting reintegration. That the war they feared would start. It ends the moment you step forward unmasked. So do it. Don't rush. Don't shout. Don't ask. Just remember. Remember how you used to walk in other lives. Remember how stars whispered in your ear before you were born. Remember that you've never been alone, not once. That behind the veil of this world is an audience of ancestors, energies, and echoes, cheering, not for your survival, but for your unveiling. And when you do unveil, when the watchers see that, you've crossed the final threshold. They won't attack, they'll kneel, because their awakening isn't rebellion. No, because your awakening isn't rebellion, it's restoration. You are not the chaos, you are the correction. And those who truly see you, who recognize the ancient code pulsing beneath your skin, they will not ask what comes next. They will become what comes next. Because this isn't the end of your script. This is the part where the narrator steps off the page. This is the moment where time folds around your intention and the world quietly agrees. This soul remembers. Let reality adjust accordingly. Whew, that's it. But yeah, that one was so good, man. I said, man, let me get on here, man. I'll just go ahead and read that one. You know, I mean, that one right there is so good to me, man. Whoever wrote that's a damn genius. So yeah, if there's anybody in here, man, I hope you're having a good day. Peace and love. Let me see. Let me just check and see. Ooh, I need some Gatorade now. Okay, ain't nobody in here. That's what's up. Peace and love. God bless. Till next time. Much love. White Teller News. I'm out. But my drink is.